Hi guys, I'm Michaela. Welcome back to my channel. I'm the owner of Days Made Florals, and this month, the month of October, I thought we could make a what I call a growing garden meadow. So I've done one here already for you guys. But yeah, I thought we could look at this and then make a new one, just so you can see how we're making them. And of course, we're using local product. The only thing that is not local, we have Spanish moss and we have just regular sheet moss. So everything else though is all local. They're coming from Sunnyside Farm, which is just 5 minutes up the street from me. And then I've also included a little bit of foliage just from around my property. So that's always nice this time of year. Aside from going out and just getting green with all the changing leaves, if you're in an area, of course, that has a lot of changing leaves this time of year, that's a perfect opportunity to go out and forage and be able to get some color that you wouldn't normally have been able to get in a flower. So yeah, so we have some beautiful foliage going on in there. So yeah, let's get started. We've got our plastic, I think this is Oasis, the brand, but a plastic little foam holder, but we're not using foam this time. We're going to use chicken wire, and I also placed a flower frog in there for two reasons. So one, I didn't want this to tip over because it is just plastic and there's no weight at the bottom. So the flower frog is very heavy and that'll hold it down. But two, that just gives a little bit extra support if we want to add in more delicate stems, like we've done on this guy over here. So yeah, kind of doing double duty there to hold it down and be a nice support for some delicate stems. Then I've layered in chicken wire and taped it just all around. You can see there's some leftover tape from another project. If this was going, you know, in a van traveling far away, I might want to use foam. But since we're just doing this right here in the studio, I'm gonna use chicken wire because I prefer that. Also better for the environment. And yeah, so we're gonna stick with that. Got our chicken wire, our plastic cage, and our frog, and we're going to add some water. Excuse the cylinder right now, my watering can is in the van, and the keys for the van are at home, and so I can't get into there right now. I just drove my regular car to the studio. So we filled that up. Actually, I'm gonna fill it a little bit more, because I wanna make sure we're getting water into the frog. And let's see, I'm still trying to figure out like what the best angle and setup is in here. There's not really, I haven't found an ideal situation. So hopefully you guys can see this. Anyway, we're gonna start off with one of my favorite things to use in almost every wedding, and that is Spanish moss. I don't know if I've mentioned it here before, but it's one of my go-tos for installations. It is so useful for a million different reasons. But I also find it very useful for creating these types of meadows. Also great for aisle markers, that sort of thing, because the way we design aisle markers, it's essentially just a larger meadow like we're doing here today. So what I'm gonna do is just layer this on and just start to pull it apart. I'm not super worried about covering the top but I do want to stretch it across just so that it has a way to hold on, so when you pick it up, it's not just at the bottom and going to fall off. So we're going to stretch it around, add a little bit more. Keep going. And this is just gonna give us some nice, like, easy coverage, softens it so we're not getting this hard shape of whatever sort of vessel you have. And then you see over here, we've got a ton of sheet moss. They come in these wooden crates like this, and this is maybe about 2 months old, and it's still, I like to keep it if I can. It's still holding up. Of course, it's more dry and brittle, but for projects like this, I think it's perfect. So with this moss, I'm just gonna tuck it in sort of just random spots, just to add some color variation, so it's not all just the gray Spanish moss. And of course, if you were transporting these, if they were centerpieces, this would be a good thing to take on site with you and add more and do finishing touches. And if you're wondering, yes, in transportation, you're going to lose some pieces, but for the most part, because we stretched the moss over top, when you pick this up, it's pretty much staying in place. It's so forgiving. And then I would just pop this into a tray with some drawer liner underneath, you know, the rubber material, so that it's not sliding around. Put it in the truck and on we go. So, all right, that is a good base. So just so you remember, we're going in this direction. Maybe kind of see that. A little bit. I need to figure this out. If you have any suggestions, let me know. Maybe an actual camera and not my phone. Maybe there's more space over this way. Yeah, a little bit. Okay, so we've got our base going. Now I'm gonna add in some foliage and some leftover dried hydrangea. You know, I love this stuff. It comes in handy throughout this time of year for so many different projects. I also love the lime green that this one has, and we've got some queen lime zinnias. I feel like that's a nice tie-in right there. So I'm gonna just add in a couple, and you can even just break these stems. What I love about, so just like the Spanish moss, creating a meadow like this to me is so forgiving. Just because you're not trying to make something perfectly round or Ikebana style where you're really emphasizing individual lines and flowers. You're making a meadow. It's supposed to be rambling and wild. And so if you have a few more concentrated focal moments in there, beautiful, wonderful. But if it's kind of all haphazard, that's okay too, in my opinion. So we've got that hydrangea. Now I'm gonna add some of this foliage. Ooh, that is so bright and autumnal. Love that. And again, I mentioned we're in October, we're at the end of October, but I don't think I mentioned we're Zone 7B, we're in Southern Maryland, and I'm just trying to use things that are around and available right now. These are a lot more red than what we have in the other arrangement, which is okay. But I was sort of trying to go a little lighter. I'll add in some of these reds. And then there can be, when these two pieces are together, maybe it's a little bit color blocked, we'll call it. I mean, that it is really pretty. And now these stems are just making sure they're touching down into the water, but even if they dried and they weren't fully submerged, that would be okay with this fall autumnal look. But obviously you definitely want to make sure your flowers are fully in the water. So we've got a nice little base going on here, and I've peppered this red throughout, kind of winding, and then same thing with the green, starting a little bit lower over here, winding through the middle and clustered more in here, and then a little bit higher. You can see there's some height over here. That way we have some movement when, if you were to do like a head table with all of these running down the center, you would have some movement and it wouldn't just be a static line, unless that's what you want. I prefer to have some movement in there. And to continue with that, this is beautiful. I could do like just a whole arrangement with that. A nice big urn arrangement, that would be very pretty. I think this is really nice here, but we have pretty much the same thing going on in the other piece. So I'm going to change it up a bit. I'm gonna angle this one. Actually, that kind of looks nice going down. Yeah. And I'll just continue to add. And I also want to, in addition to these higher, more gestural pieces, I do want to make sure I'm getting some lower coverage in there. So things that are shorter, coming forward. I think people forget to do that. They forget to do the coming forward bits, and so sometimes an arrangement can just look like it's going like straight up. Again, if that's what you're going for, great, but I find that that's not what I'm going for, and sometimes that happens, and so I've tried to find ways to fix that, and I found that you could just simply go in and put something coming pretty much directly out. It's pretty. Also keeping in mind, even though this is just for fun, that if this was for a long table, you'd want to make sure you're keeping it pretty narrow, because you need to fit glassware and plates and all the things, table numbers. I'm getting a little bit of movement by having delicate pieces come out, but overall keeping it more elongated. The same way I would if we were doing a compote arrangement, but for a rectangular table. I'm just gonna show you guys what these are looking like together right now. Let's see. And so I think in this case, because we have these, take this Lazy Susan out, because we have the branches that stretch in between, I don't think that they would necessarily need to be, you know, touching super close, but I would add maybe a little Spanish moss in between just to tie them together and bridge that gap. But we would probably have, you know, candles mixed in, and yeah, again, just some Spanish moss in there would be really pretty. Fighting with these branches over here, and they're also getting caught on my sweater, but that's how it goes. All right, I think it's time to add in some flowers, but I'll show you this up close. Spanish moss, the hydrangea, some of the sheep moss, some foliage, looking good. I'm also going to move these branches to the back. They're beautiful, but oh my gosh, I think they're distracting and maybe you can't see the arrangement. Yeah, that's better. Let's add in some flowers. So we've got this large cafe dahlia. That's gorgeous. Oh my gosh. You know, it's a love-hate relationship, and not just because they, you know, once they start wilting, that's it, but because they're such a statement in an arrangement and a bouquet. And these are on the smaller side. You know, there are dinner plate size ones that are dinner plate size, which can be hard to work with, but they are just gorgeous. Color is beautiful. Yeah, I'm gonna start with that one just because it is a larger focal piece, focal flower. And then we have another gorgeous dahlia here. And because we don't have another cafe dahlia, I'm gonna add this one close to this guy here, just so we can continue that color. Gosh, so pretty. And of course, like with the chicken wire, things are gonna be moving around. You know, that's the difference. When you work with foam, you put something in, it stays exactly where you want it. With the chicken wire in this type of arrangement, you're gonna get some movement. And cluster right here. Then I'm gonna start to move to the other side. And I'm just working with the same materials at once. So I'm working with all of the dahlias at once, and then I'll move to, you know, all of the cosmos or zinnias. And sometimes that can be helpful. I'll put this one on the other side. I'm not super focused on what's going on towards the back, just because this is just for a demonstration. But had it been for an actual event, of course we would want to turn it around, make sure we're getting all the angles. We've got some beautiful yarrow here in a pink blushy tone. It's harder to see on camera. I'll put it next to this red foliage just to soften it a little bit. Some more yarrow. Just tucking it wherever, you know. And then we've got some beautiful cosmos. When my garden was flourishing, this is one of my favorite flowers to grow. I just love having them around. And I haven't had them in a while, so I'm just happy to have them now. But these are what I would consider a floaty flower. And beautiful line on these, interesting little weird things, weird buds that give it more character. I'm gonna tuck this guy in so that he follows the line of this foliage right here. I'm gonna tuck this one into the center where the flower frog is so that it kind of is able to poke up. So pretty. This one has, you know, a beautiful, it's gorgeous and it's got a lot of buds, but just in my opinion, it's a few too many and too even. That feels better. And I'm clustering more over here. Lower at least, and then maybe we can go a little, yeah, that works. This is our tallest one in the bunch, so let's see if we can have another moment of some good height. Yeah. Okay, I like that. I think this one is very straight, maybe too straight. I'm gonna angle it just the slightest bit. Yeah. And then I think it works because we have this other one that mimics it in the other direction and comes up a little higher. So we have that step that we've talked about in other videos. You could continue this by adding another even taller one, or maybe we add in some foliage. But I think that's one of those things where, like, if you just left it alone, it sort of gives it some, just like a little bit of unusual, weird character. I like imperfections. You know, I like in people when people aren't super perfect in their appearance, and I like it in flowers and arrangements when there's just like a little something off. Now this one's spilling out to this side. And we're still making sure all of our stems are in water. You can still just, I'll show you it so far. Pick this guy up. Ooh, that looks so much better just up close. Okay, I love the just wildness of this. And I think, gosh, sometimes it's so hard to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. I think it's just intuition, and you just start to get more comfortable over time, and just being able to like throw things in. I know that sounds like, well, that doesn't make sense, there has to be a rhyme or reason, but I think if you learn the reasons enough and practice enough, you can get to a certain point where you can kind of do it without thinking and just start to throw things in. And I feel like this is a good example of where it's happening. It doesn't always happen, but it's working. And I think that's what you would call a flow state. And yeah, when I get there, I'm happy I have gotten to that spot, because it's not always easy. And I do find it, you know, I love working with flowers and I love doing weddings, but then you get so busy and it just becomes this production when you're doing weddings that you lose that flow and that connection, because there's other things you're managing. You're managing people and product and timelines and all these other things. So I love being able to do a project like this and just get into the flow. And I think it's important. I haven't done it for a really long time. I used to do it a lot when I started my garden in 2020, like so many people did. I was doing it a lot, and then I sort of lost it. Just the ability to take that time. We just had a lot of life things going on. Like I said in the last video, a lot of fertility stuff. And we were also in the midst of moving and buying a home. And so many things like creativity fell to the wayside. But I'm feeling good and like I'm getting back into it. And that brings me joy. So I hope, you know, other people, I hope maybe this can inspire you to go and get creative again. It's hard, you have to push yourself. You know, no one's telling you to go and do it every day, so you have to tell yourself. And I think that's the hard thing about being a business owner. No boss is checking in on you. You gotta show up and do it. Yeah, that's my little inspirational rant for the day. Yeah, so let's continue. We've got just these couple cosmos left. Beautiful cosmos. And I think maybe we should add them to the other side. The other meadow. Yep, beautiful. Alrighty. I'm gonna again try and angle this so that maybe you can see it all a little bit better. Bear with me. table. Okay, yeah, you can kind of see what's going on. Once we got to the venue, we would place these down, and then I would say come and add some Spanish moss. And not like a perfect clump, just like trail it out, make it look organic, nothing perfect. Maybe some sheet moss, just break up in there. Maybe some more up front. And this can be a good way if you were doing like a growing garden meadow, like a ceremony piece or aisle markers on the ground, using this sheet moss to really shape out these pieces so that they're not all just, you know, straight across. You can really build this out and make it look even more wild and like it just happened to grow there. And that is sort of always the goal, is just make things look like they just grew there. That's my goal in the aesthetic I'm always trying to achieve. Okay. We're also fighting light right now too. Normally this window is pretty decent, but with the season change and I guess a cloudy day, we're just not getting much light. Anyway, so I would say this is done. You could leave it just like this, or, you know, if I'll probably take a bunch of photos of this after, and given that this isn't for a real centerpiece, I'd probably add in even more structural foliage pieces. But yeah, I hope that was helpful. Learning how to design a meadow. There are so many different ways to do it. In fact, I've never even done it with these mechanics before. I've done obviously chicken wire in a vessel, but not with this particular vessel. So that just goes to show you that there's just a million ways you can do this. And it's a lot of trial and error and just figuring out what was working best for you, for transportation, for wherever they're going. Just gonna pop a few candles in there. Gorgeous. And that is it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if there's any other videos you want to see, whether it's bouquets, certain type of installations, or mechanics behind certain type of installations, or candles or hard good information, let me know in the comments. And I've got a little bit more time now that we're wrapping up our fall wedding season, so I would love to provide some more information for you guys. Yeah, so again, my name is Michaela, and I hope you enjoyed this. Have a good one. Bye.